Hi, class. It's been a minute since we talked about the articles that are upcoming for this week. So I'm just going to do a quick review here. They're the same PowerPoints as before, but that way you have a little refresher of what we're about to read. So your first article is by Rosen. This is a little bit old now, but it's a classic study because she interviewed 22 survivors. Some of them were actually in the relationships. So 22 people who had experienced relationship violence. They all happened to be women, and they talked to her about how were they attracted to the person who later became violent. So she calls that the processes of seduction. And then she also talks to them about what their thoughts were once the relationship started to become violent and why they didn't feel like they should leave right away. So she calls that the processes of entrapment. So a couple of examples of things she'll talk about are romantic fantasies like a Beauty and the Beast phenomenon, Cinderella effect, things that we've already mentioned in class, but now we're actually reading. So I think you'll enjoy that article. The second one is also about romantic fantasies. So this is an article by Jackson a few years later. And Jackson also interviewed 23 people. This time it was all high school students, so a slightly younger population. And she talks quite a bit about romantic fantasies in terms of exposure to things like princess culture and how we teach young girls what to expect out of relationships, and that sometimes those expectations are not healthy. So she'll talk about things like meeting your prince, and then when it turns out that your prince is not charming but is in fact a monster or a toad. And then how do you get out of the relationship? So again, I think that's a pretty interesting article that I hope you enjoy. The third article for next week, is by Kirkwood, and I chose this one because it's one chapter out of this book, actually. So she doesn't really describe her sample because it's chapter 3 or 4. She describes the sample in different chapters. So the people she's interviewing are about 30 survivors. Half of them are from the United States and half of them are from England. And the people she interviews talk about the emotional abuse specifically. So she identifies 6 different kinds of emotional abuse through these interviews, and then she describes each one and talks about examples from her. The last article you're reading is a little bit different. It's a more recent article, and I chose it because it focuses on younger children's experiences when they are in violent families and how having a sibling can help. So basically, it's 2 case studies of families with violence, and they each describe kind of how they relied on their sibling for emotional support through the violence. So good luck, and I hope you enjoy the articles for this week. I'll talk to you soon.